Happy 4th of July Eve. It's good to see all of your faces watching our faces here on The Sweat. Alongside Jessie, Coffield, I'm Emerson, Lotzia.
We're going to get to golf. We'll get to our NFL season previews. We'll get to why Mike Clevinger quit baseball at one point to become a professional skateboarder.
Hang 10, bro.
But let's start it with MLB Pickoff.
And to do that, we need these three gentlemen, all hailing from DK Live. Steve Buchanan in the middle, Julian Edlow on the right in the hat.
Correct.
Gary and Thorne on the left. Guys, Chris Sale has the highest strikeout total on DK Sportsbook this evening, 8.5 against the Blue Jays. So which would you pick? The over at -134 or the under at +108? Let's start with you, Steve.
Yeah, I'm going to be a little hesitant here, and I'm going to take the over. I mean, the Blue Jays have the 11th highest K percentage in the league against lefties, and over Sale's last 10 starts, 8 of them have double-digit strikeouts. The one of them that didn't have it was against the Blue Jays, and quite honestly, I'm not that crazy about this start for Sale to begin with. I mean, the Blue Jays haven't done much, anything well this season, but one thing they have done is they have hit Chris Sale. I still think he can get some of the strikeouts tonight, but I just don't like this matchup for him at all. For whatever reason, the Blue Jays just seem to have this number. So I'm going to take the over in this spot. He can still get the strikeouts, but overall, I just don't think this is a good spot for Sale.
But Jules, the guy does have a 7-4 career record against the Blue Jays.
Yeah, this is a tough spot. It's a good number at 8.5, and like Steve said, Chris Sale's been racking up the strikeouts. He's been in double digits in all but 2 of his starts since the start of the month of May. So he's been doing this quite often, but one of the 2 times that he did not do it was against the Toronto Blue Jays, and he also didn't do it in his start earlier this season where he actually lost to the Toronto Blue Jays. So it's a really big number. If I had to play it, though, I would play the over because of how good Chris Sale's strikeout numbers have been. And not only have they been in the double digits, we've seen his ceiling with that 17 strikeout game. So I'll continue to go with the upside here, but I would much rather play something like the way that Sale's been pitching. Like, you can get the Blue Jays team total at 3.5, the over at even money. I would much rather do something like that that's been a little bit more consistent with the way that Sale's pitched this season.
Yeah, Gary, and it's Sale Day in your neck of the woods, but Sale Day doesn't really carry the weight that it used to with him struggling throughout this season. So you like the over or the under here with 8.5 strikeouts?
Yeah, I'm going to take the over like these guys. I mean, obviously Sale hasn't looked like himself against the Jays so far this season, but the first start was kind of in that weird, he's only throwing 91 miles per hour territory of the season. And the last start, really aside from the first inning where, he walked, I think, 3 batters, his pitch count got up to like 37 pitches, he was fine the rest of that game. And I think he proceeded to strike out 8 Blue Jays in the 4 innings he pitched the remainder of that contest. Like, this question is basically, is Chris Sale going to pitch into the 6th? And I think he's going to pitch into the 6th. Like, for as good as the Jays offense has been the past 14 days, they're actually 4th best in baseball by WRC+, by WOBA. They're still striking out 24.1% of the time. Like, there are just strikeouts in this lineup, and Chris Sale is going to take advantage.
Jules, the Astros and Rockies have a huge over-under at 14 total runs. You can get -124 on the under or +102 on the over. They did combine for 17 last night, so would you pick the over here?
I actually would. It's a very large number, but I do not have what it takes to play under 14 here. I think I would have to lean with the over. You just mentioned the 17 runs the night before. The Astros are projected pretty much for 8 runs on this slate. And Wade Miley, although he's been okay at times this season, is still Wade Miley pitching at Coors Field. So this is a game that should have plenty of runs. You just look at that Dodgers series where we had some really good pitchers, Kershaw, all the different guys on the Dodgers coming in there, and it looked like there were such big numbers that it was so tempting to play unders on all these 12.5s, 13.5, and most of those games had 20 runs or so in them. So the way that Coors has been going lately with an AL team, a really good AL offense in there like Houston, I'm leaning over.
Garion, over under 14 total runs. Do you want to take the over?
I don't really want to. I will, though. I've been living vicariously through Julian's Twitter betting on Coors the last week.
Oh, don't do that.
Seems scary. Seems scary to ever bet a total at Coors Field. But you look at some of the numbers from the past month or so when it comes to hitting the over. The Rockies go over 8 of their last 9 home games. They've gone over every single time that Peter Lambert has taken the mound his last 4 starts. They're 4-1 to the over the last 4 times they've played a left-handed pitcher at Coors Field. Just everything suggests the over here. Minus 124 is not that bad a number either, so I think I would lean over.
Steve, the consensus seems to be over. Are you going with the group here?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you have to take the over here. I mean, Peter Lambert has been hit hard in Coors Field. Wade Miley is a lefty pitching in Coors Field. I think that's kind of enough said right there. There's just a lot to like in this game, and I could never realistically sit here and take a Coors under and feel good about it, even with the total that's sitting at 14 runs right now. So, and look, it's not like these are bad offenses either. These are 2 really good offenses that are facing each other in Coors Field, and there's matchups that you like on both sides here. So I get that the total is really large, and taking the over on a total of 14 runs feels pretty daunting. But 2 good offenses, 2 pitchers that are average at best. I have no problem taking the over here.
Well, the Cubs-Pirates game features not 1 but 2 starting pitchers who used to be aces but really aren't so hot this year. So you have Chris Archer and Yu Darvish, both carry strikeout totals of 5.5 into this game. So who do you think has a better shot at going over here, Garion?
I think justifiably Archer's odds are worse, worse as a better as if you are a book.
Yeah, so you have minus 125 for Archer, plus 115 for Darvish.
Yeah, and I think that's justified, because if you look for all of Archer's faults, and there are many. In June, he actually had a 29.5% strikeout rate. Like, he does a lot of things wrong, but he was still racking up the strikeouts when the ball wasn't flying out of the ballpark. It does worry me a little bit that he left his last start with an injury, and it's been kind of hit or miss all week as to whether or not he was going to really make this start. So the risk he's just mysteriously pulled after 3 is obviously on the table, but I would have to lean with Archer, just also based on the fact that the Pirates over the last 30 days have the lowest strikeout rate in all of baseball, just over 17%. Like, they swing so much, they just never get to 2 strike counts, and that's kind of an important step in striking out 6 batters.
All right, Steve. Garion says he's going with Archer minus 125. You like that?
I mean, honestly, if it came down to it, I would take neither. I mean, neither is really in an appealing spot for this, but if you have to choose here, it definitely has to be Archer. I mean, like Gary just said, the Pirates don't strike out much at all. I mean, even over the entire season, they still have the 3rd lowest K percentage in the league against righties at 18.2%. Only the Astros and the Angels have a lower K percentage in the league. So, I mean, Archer does have a 9.7 K9 on the year, so it's not like he's not getting strikeouts. It just really hasn't been that effective or that good on the mound. So it's hard to trust a guy like that, especially against the Cubs lineup. So again, I don't really like either side. I wouldn't be placing money on either one of these, but choosing between the 2, 100% going to be Archer.
All right, Jules, so why not plus 115 odds for Darvish to hit the over 5.5 strikeouts?
Yeah, I tried to find a way to take the plus odds here. I would much prefer to get them, and Darvish has surpassed this number in 3 straight starts. He's averaging 8 strikeouts over each of his last 3 starts. But on the whole, he just hasn't been that guy this season. And when he played Pittsburgh, these guys mentioned how hot the Pirates' offense has been lately. That's true. They're not really a strikeout offense, and they're just hitting so well right now. But even when Darvish faced them earlier in the season, when Pittsburgh was not a very strong offense at all, he still only struck out 4 Pirates. So just by default here, this is going to be Archer for me for all the reasons the guys said, but it's not necessarily something I'm comfortable with.
All right. Sounds fantastic.
Sounds
Thank
great.
You, guys.
You 3, please hang tight. Steve's going to put up his bukes to wrap up the show. PGA pin placement arrives after we hear who the winners are of NHL free agency.
All right, we're discussing takeaways from NHL free agency. Brendan Glasheen with Ben Zwyman of DK Live. Want to get your thoughts on maybe the biggest winner? You can go team or player of free agency, Ben.
Yeah, I think it's the Nashville Predators and Matt Duchene. I think this is a perfect fit for both sides. The Predators really wanted to clear that cap space out by trading PK Subban to fit Duchene in. Duchene gets paid $8 million per, a similar contract to what Ryan Johansson got from GM David Poile. So yeah, Duchene's still young. He's only 28 years old. The cap's only going to go up, so that cap hit really isn't too bad. Plus, the Preds know that their window is now. They've added the top 6 center that they've really coveted for a while. They haven't had it. And the Central Division is very stacked, but they won it last year. So, I mean, they're heading into this season loaded up. I think this could be the move that puts them over the top and back in the Stanley Cup final. Duchene had spent most of his career on bad teams, but last year with the Blue Jackets after that trade, from Ottawa. He was pretty good in the playoffs, 10 points in 10 games in his first extended postseason action. So, yeah, I think he's hungry and he's primed for a career season with Nashville. He should slot in as that second-line center, maybe even on the first line with Philip Forsberg and Victor Arvidsson. But, yeah, I mean, the Predators get very deep now. Kyle Turris fits in on that third line, so they have great center depth. They still don't really lose much on defense by trading PK Subban. They still have Roman Josi. They still have Ryan Ellis and Matthias Ekholm. So, yeah, I think the Predators are really primed for another run at the Cup.
All right, let's gossip about some dudes who can roll a good meatball. The 3M Open arrives tomorrow. First time event on the PGA Tour after calling Champions Tour home since the early 2000s. Jessie?
All right, DK Live's Jeff Ulrich and Reed Fowler are here for a fun little game of PGA pin placement. Woohoo! Predicting where the following golfers will finish the weekend. Starting with Jason Day, who is the second biggest favorite on DK Sportsbook this week at plus 1,000 to win. Where do you think he finishes, though, Reed?
Yeah, he'll be at Emerson's lineup once again this week. Finished pretty well, top 10 last week, and I think he's around that same area. I think he's still getting used to Stevie Williams on the bag. I think he's still getting used to, having actually good finishes and hitting his irons a lot better. He gained a ton last week, I think a little over 6 through strokes gained approach. And if you just look at what we want here and just the ownership across the top guys, over $10,000. It's pretty split. I mean, it's averaged around 17-18% of what I got it right now. So a lot of people are doing the Stars and Scrubs lineup. But if you remember, Dustin Johnson missed the cut last week. A lot of these guys, maybe they're thinking a little bit too far in advance with the Open Championship. A guy like Jason Day, though, who can get his putter going at any spot. Bentgrass, not his best. It's Poa. He really likes to putt. Maybe more on the West Coast, or we've seen Poa a lot more this week, this month around this season. So we'll see. He lost strokes putting, but a guy like Jason Day, who's number 1 in putting around the green, all that good stuff, I got him for a top 8, top 10 around there.
Jeff, where do you think he finishes?
Yeah, I mean, Day's interesting. We'll just wait till Reed gets off the screen here. We don't want to look at that.
Wait.
No,
Yeah, there it is. Thank you.
Baby. All right. Anyway, Jason Day had a really good ball striking tournament at the Travelers his last time out. I mean, he was second tee to green. He was like top 5 in both off the tee and in approaches, which is a pretty big differentiator from his season-long stats because his ball striking, especially with his irons, has been crap all year. So I'm pretty bullish on Jason Day. I mean, he's played well in the summer over his career. He's said before, like, it's good for his back playing in the hotter weather. So I like Jason Day. I think he's going to finish top 5 here. I do really like him in DraftKings format too. I think he's going to be a little bit lower owned than like Bryson. He might even be lower owned than Brooks Koepka. So I think top 5 for Jason Day. I think he's going to continue his run. Just needs to get his putter on.
Jeff, speaking of Bryson, signs are pointing to a significant turnaround for this guy. Finished T8 a couple weeks ago at the Travelers. So where do you think he wraps up the weekend in this one?
I mean, I wrote up Bryson this week in my article. I definitely like him too. I mean, he's trending to be like a really chalky pick on DraftKings this week, possibly the highest owned player, but it's for good reason. I mean, it's a player who's top 5 in par 5 birdie or better percentage. It just makes a lot of birdies in general. He's probably going to set up for a fairly easy venue where you can bomb it off the tee, and you need a little bit of length on these par 5s. So Bryson has started to play a lot better. His all-around game was trending well at the Travelers too. So I can't really say that much poorly about him. I just think a guy like Jason Day is playing a little bit better right now. I think he's a little bit closer. I think Bryson's ball striking isn't quite there yet. So I'm going to pencil him in for a T between T15 and T10.
Fowler, that T8 at the Travelers, his first top 10 on tour since the Sony Open in January. So is there reason to expect another one this week?
I mean, yeah. I mean, when you start sounding like Julian Edlow plugging your own article, then you know that it's starting to point down in terms of what's true or not.
Look, I didn't plug anything. Darian plugged my Twitter plays for me because
Julian, this is golf. Be quiet.
Fowler brought me into the segment.
He's got the attire, though, when you play golf. No, look, I like Bryson this week. Like Jeff mentioned, a lot of us did feature Bryson DeChambeau in terms of who we were highlighting. And because if we look at where he's trending, right, he's trending towards a solid finish. Where we saw him do well last year was around this time, right? Summertime is really when Bryson started to ramp up. And with all the wins that he had earlier in the season, you start to look at this guy who sees his tangible results. The scientist, he looks like someone who, when he sees those results on a piece of paper and he sees himself trending up, that he sort of puts his foot on the accelerator. Jeff mentioned ball striking, not that bad, right outside the top 20 over the last 24 rounds. Birdie or better gain, par 5 scoring, all of those are in good measure. I really like him this week. Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Okay.
I'm so hungry.
Reed, Sung J M hasn't finished outside of the top 21 in 3 consecutive events. Can he continue the good play? Jeff said he liked this guy yesterday, but we did see him have some issues with his putter at the Rocket Mortgage Classic.
Yeah, so again, I have to agree with Jeff here, which clearly I do not like. But he does make good points. Blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while. But if you look at what he's been able to do, right, his opportunities gained tend to birdie or better game. When you look at both of those stats together, he's getting it close to the hole. Even if he's not on the green, he's getting it close, then he's scoring with his around the green game, and then also when he's been able to get the hot putter going. A guy like Sanjay, who's been able to, again, use that putter, maybe not last week, but before that, coming in hot this week, I think a top 25 around there, 25th place, where he's finished, right, 21st of the last 2 events is right around where I got him.
Jeff, he's had 12 top 25s this season so far.
Top 25. We can do better than that, Reed. I think Sanjay M's going to win this week. I really do. I think this sets up really well for him. And Reed mentioned he did have a cold putter last week, but it was really just one bad round of putting. He lost 3 strokes with his putter on Sunday in Detroit. If he had just putted field average, he probably finishes in the top 5, and everyone probably wants to play him this week. But it's not going to work out that way. The thing is, Sanjay M has putted well. Like, if you go back to his other 2 events, he was top 10 in the field in strokes gained putting, and his ball striking came around last week. I think this might just be the perfect situation where he just melds everything together and has a big week. He also played really well on another Arnold Palmer designed course at Bay Hill earlier this year at a top 5. The course and venue, TPC Twin Cities, is Arnold Palmer designed venue. It's hard to say, but I like Sanjay M a lot this week. I do think he's going to have a really good chance to get his first win.
Reed, can you say Arnold Palmer designed venue?
Arnold Palmer designed venue. Pretty easy there, Jeff.
Good job.
Thank you.
Finally, Phil Mickelson's been pretty horrible lately, missing the cut in, 5 of his last 8 events. So what makes you think he's going to step it up this time around, Jeffrey, or maybe you don't?
I really don't. I think you'll see Phil make the cut and maybe be a decent play, maybe top 30 or something. But I'm not really expecting much more than that than for him to make the weekend and just kind of muddle around. He hasn't shown any form since the beginning of the season when he got his win. You can generally see it coming with Phil, like he'll throw in a low round or he'll go on a birdie streak. That just hasn't really been happening. He didn't even really put together a solid stretch at the U.S. Open outside of maybe 9 holes. So there's nothing for me to believe here that he's just going to come in and start making birdies again. He's certainly capable of it. Look, I mean, he's Phil Mickelson. He's he's a top 10 player ever maybe in this game or close to it. So the talent's there. It's just he's almost 50. He's not been trending well. He's got his win on the season already. I expect him to make the cut, but not much more. You
cannot have much faith in this guy, Reed.
No, I don't. I think he's focusing too much on his social media account, which for all of us
it's
is a huge. It's fantastic.
It's been really good.
It's been great. But when you look at what he's been, like Jeff mentioned, what he's been able to do, you're not seeing the typical Phil Mickelson, right? We kind of talk about fatigue and motivation at this point, right? He kind of came out after the U.S. Open saying, I'm probably never going to win a U.S. Open. You don't really hear that from a guy like Phil, who's pretty into himself, has a lot of confidence. Clearly, one of the best on the PGA Tour of the last two decades or so, but just look at the stats. They're not there. The approach is not there. The around the green, all the stuff that we like to see Phil on. Even if he gets bogeys, right? We see that birdie or better gain or that birdie percentage be up there, but he's just not putting it together. He doesn't have 4 consistent rounds really since the Pro-Am where he won. He won this season, but that feels like ages ago because he hasn't done well recently. So honestly, miscut is not out of the realm. So I'm against Jeff on that, but if he gets it 30th, maybe optimistically.
All right, Slate Approved Pick Time. Who's your lock for this event, Reed?
Well, we all know who the lock's going to be. It's going to be Tony Finau.
Oh,
yes, sir. He got a Minnesota Timberwolves. That's for Julian Edelman here. Minnesota Timberwolves jersey from the tournament. I got Tony getting his first win, not Sanjay.
Jeff, is it Sung J M?
Yeah.
Sanjay, look, I got the Korean flag. I researched it. It's perfect back there on the whiteboard. So, yeah, Sanjay.
Okay. Anywho, we'll have you two back as we begin our AFC South fantasy previews. No Jaguars talk today. Right after Pat Mayo chimes in on the 3M Open.
Most expensive players on the board, the #1 player in the world, Brooks Koepka, is in Minnesota, as I will be for the week, but I'll be there on Friday at the 3 a.m. If you want to hit me up, just, tweet at me. I'll be periodically checking my phone until I get too drunk or it runs out of juice. But Brooks is, the shade, $100 less than DJ was last week, 11.9. I think that price tag is going to scare a lot of people off after everyone invested in DJ last week. Hideki's at 11.1. Day, Bryson, and Reed are the other three above $10,000, 10.9, 10.5, and 10,000. I mentioned this on the show with Feinberg. I love Bryson this week, and I don't think I'm alone in that regard. I don't love the price tag here. I don't love the betting odds, but in full disclosure, I bet the 14-1 number. I also like Patrick Reed a lot, and it feels like a lot of people aren't necessarily following me on this, but they're drawing the same conclusions that I am. In a spot like this at a high variance tournament, is this one of the better spots to just avoid the chalk this week?
Oh, definitely. Long term, that's what you want to do because water is so unpredictable in the sense of, a shot, if it's close to the drink, one bounce and you're in, other times you're not. So that's definitely something on a macro level. I'm big Patrick Reed this week. That's the guy for me. I just think that I totally get what you're saying with Bryson. I think Reed's kind of doing the same thing though. He's starting to get it together. He was really good last week. People noticed, but it wasn't like he by any stretch broke through because Lashley was so far ahead. And I just think his game sets up well for this. I think he's poised to make kind of a late charge in what's been a pretty bad year for him.
Yeah, in terms of Reed and Bryce, I guess Reed can win at any sort of course, but he's one of those players that once the irons get hot, then all of a sudden he's just making birdies in bunches. And Bryson, if we expect this to be a low-scoring event, he's never won a tournament higher than 15 under. So it's been like 15 under, 17 under, 18 under. Like these are the type of events that he really wants to basically just fire at all the pins, and hopefully he ends up getting a hot putter. And the putter's been pretty good lately. The approaches have been really good. The one part of the game where he's struggling at this moment at least, is off the tee, which is just really strange for Bryson.
It's been that kind of year with him. I just feel like, it's like a whack-a-mole situation. He fixes one thing and then the putter's cold. And obviously off the tee is the least of my worries usually with him. So I have no problem. I expect he's going to be, I don't have any thoughts on ownership per se, but just off the top of my head, I would expect he'll be pretty popular just because he is showing signs of life. People like to play him. And it's nothing against him, but I think for me, Reed, if I pay down, obviously Decky, I think is the safest of the bunch just because he churns out a good finish every single week.
Yeah, I expect Hideki to be the highest owned player from above this $10,000 range. He was the highest owned player overall last week in the $5 on DraftKings, and coming off another good week where he was the only expensive guy. I guess Fowler did okay, but Hideki actually did make a bit of a push that if you invested in Hideki last week and not Dustin, you were basically like, this is a big win for me.
It's been our favorite thing this
You've
week.
been
Just
my
our
favorite
favorite thing. Oh my God. Oh wow. You're like family to me. Taking an early fantasy look at each team around the NFL, seeing as we're just 62 days away from week 1 kicking off.
All right.
Can't wait.
Yep, I know. It's exciting stuff, right? We knocked out the NFC South the past 2 days. You can see those previews on DK Live right now. Turning our attention, though, to the AFC South. DK Live's Reed Fowler, Jeff Ulrich, and Pierce Dietrich. They're all here to chime in.
All right, guys, DK Live's panel is predicting DeAndre Hopkins will be Houston's fantasy MVP this season. Do you agree with that pick, Pierce?
Yes. Next question.
All right, we'll go to the next
Okay. No, I'm kidding.
We're going to give you analysis, but it's pretty ridiculous. The thing that surprised me in looking up DeAndre Hopkins is he's only 27 years old. It feels like he's been around the league forever. He's only 27, 1 year older than Michael Thomas, who seems like he hasn't been around at all. And his age is important because he's the second youngest receiver to get 500 receptions, the second youngest receiver to get 7,000 receptions, trails Larry Fitzgerald in both those categories. But what makes him unique is he's done it with basically 10 different quarterbacks. No one puts up those kind of numbers with different quarterbacks every single year. Not to mention, those quarterbacks have been god-awful. We probably haven't even seen half of what DeAndre Hopkins is capable of. Plus, there aren't any weapons on this team. He's still pretty much the only guy they can go to.
Okay, Reed, DeAndre Hopkins, do you agree?
Don't besmirch the good name of Brock Osweiler.
Oh, God.
Okay?
Oh,
in
dude.
Brocktober. Out of all people, Pierce Dietrich with the nicknames for the quarterbacks. No, he's right. I mean, 6th in receptions, targets, touchdowns, whatever you want, red zone targets. This guy is a stud. I wouldn't. A close second though is Watson, right? So just devil's advocate, when you look at Watson and what he's been able to do, or what he was able to do last year with the worst offensive line with 62 sacks allowed, it was only 2 points in total PPR points behind DeAndre Hopkins. Now, a quarterback and a receiver, you can battle which one is which easier in terms of how to get those points, but look, DeAndre Hopkins top 4 in the last 3 or 4 years. There was that one off year, and I think it was with Brock Osweiler, where he wasn't in like that top consideration. But this guy can catch every single ball thrown at him. It doesn't matter who's on the opposite side of the field. This guy's going to soak up targets. He is absolutely the MVP.
Jeff, is part of the reason he's the MVP just because, like, who would be the next best offensive weapon on that roster anyway?
Yeah, I mean, you could make like some kind of logical argument for Deshaun Watson being their MVP, I guess. But the thing is with Watson, everything would have to go perfect. He'd have to rush for like 8 or 9 touchdowns. He'd have to not get hurt, which I think is the biggest knock against him. And he'd probably have to throw a bunch of like long touchdown passes to Will Fuller or something. But look, DeAndre Hopkins has really meshed quite well with Deshaun Watson. So I think the upside with Hopkins is obviously bigger. 70% completion rate, which is actually a lot higher than a lot of the other stud wide receivers like Devontae Adams and Julio Jones. So there's really nothing to criticize with DeAndre Hopkins. He's played through injuries. He doesn't miss games. He beats up on like good cornerbacks. He's the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy. I mean, he's obviously going to be the MVP on his team.
All right, the opposite of most valuable player is least valuable player. The panel predicting Lamar Miller will be that guy, so meaning a player who will be overvalued. You think that will be the case here, Reed? He kind of feels like the type of running back you would settle for instead of covet.
Yeah, so I don't think he's overvalued because we always get Lamar Miller at like a, discounted price, but he always comes in that RB2. So if you think that Lamar Miller is going to be an RB1 and you draft him as your RB1, then yeah, of course, he is going to be the least valuable player, but he still turns out RB2s. You're not going to lose, right? You're not going to lose your league with Lamar Miller as your RB2. It's Will Fuller, actually, for me, in terms of where he's being drafted, right? This guy hasn't been healthy his entire time there. And we're like a wide receiver 35. His counterpart, who we'll talk about in a little bit, is going after him. Dante Pettis is going after him. If you look at Will Fuller and just where you have to get him, again, he's not going to cost you a ton, but when you just look at the upside of a Will Fuller, you get it, right, with those long touchdowns. And we know Watson's numbers, his splits are better with Fuller on the field. It's just he's hardly on the field. So if you're banking on him as a wide receiver too, that scares me a little bit. Lamar Miller is not going to lose you a league. Like I said, he's going to be an RB2 week in, week out.
All right, Jeff, last time I checked, Houston doesn't have the best offensive line either.
Yeah, look, Lamar Miller might not lose you a league, but he's not going to win you a league. That's the problem. His stats have bottomed out. I mean, he's like a 900, 800-yard runner and a 6-touchdown guy, and that's with basically no competition. And I think that's what worries me the most about Lamar Miller. Dante Foreman is coming in healthily. Dante Foreman is a young guy I know he's coming off an Achilles injury, but he's 23. Miller is pushing 29. Like, he's getting up there for running backs. He's been in the league longer than I think most people realize. And he's basically a nothing in PPR. So if Foreman comes in, and the coaches have already started talking him up, and I know it's dangerous to listen to that, but I think Lamar Miller is definitely due for possibly at least a split workload this year, because there's just, like, what do the Texans have to lose by giving Foreman more work? Absolutely nothing. They know what they have in Lamar Miller. It's really not that much. And for fantasy purposes, I just don't see the upside there. So I do think he is the least valuable player.
Pierce, you look at some of the firepower on the offense, Sean Watson, Hopkins, Fuller, Kiki Kuti, who we'll talk more about here in a second. I mean, that should help Miller, right?
I disagree with him being the least valuable player. You know what you're going to get. He's durable. He's consistent. And like Reed said, yeah, he's not an RB1, but you know he's going to give you, 1,000 yards at the end of the season. Those points count. He will help you win games. Unlike a lot of the guys that are getting drafted around him, you don't know what they're going to do. Guys that are getting drafted around the same spot are guys like Latavius Murray. We don't know what he's going to do. We have no idea. That's really risky. Jordan Howard, we don't know if he's going to get playing time. James White, you want to trust a New England Patriots running back season-wise. Good luck with that. Kareem Hunt, we don't know what you're going to get. But with Lamar Miller, he's durable. He's consistent. Sure, he doesn't score a bunch of points. He doesn't catch anything out of the backfield. But I don't believe there are any weapons. He is the next guy in line after DeAndre Hopkins. He's going to get red zone carries. He is not bad for a RB2.
Okay, well, as Emerson mentioned, let's get to that. So Kiki Kuti, He has been named as the breakout player for the Texans. Who do you think the breakout player is going to be here, Jeff? I mean, we saw Kuti make his debut in week 4, 11 passes, 109 yards. Yep. Pretty impressive, but then those hamstring injuries really hampered him the rest of the season. He played in just 5 more regular season games. So if he's healthy, is it going to be him?
I like Keke Kuti. I mean, I think he worked really well with Deshaun Watson. You don't see a guy come in and is like his first game and get 15 targets, which he did, I think, way back in week 4 or 5. That's pretty extraordinary. So I like Kuti. My problem is he going to catch 90 passes with Will Fuller and DeAndre Hopkins out there too? I don't think so. So I think the upside here is a little bit more limited than people think. I like Foreman for my breakout player for the Texans. I've already kind of rallied on why. I think Lamar Miller is due for some regression. I think the Texans don't really have anything to lose by pushing Donta Foreman. And I think Donta Foreman is better than Lamar Miller. And if he comes in healthy, he's already getting talked up. I think Donta Foreman could be in for a bigger year than people realize. So I think he's going to be the breakout player.
Pierce, who's going to be the breakout player for the Texans?
Nobody. Could be DeAndre Hopkins and Watson like it is every single year. I mean, who was the breakout player last year for him? It was supposed to be Keke Kuti. And the only thing breaking out was his hamstring from his leg. And if he's a speed receiver and he's got hamstring issues, he's just magically going to be better. That's why that's what we always do. We look at a receiver who's fast, and then that becomes the breakout guy. He also has some pretty good stats in college. And then we expect them to just take those skills and then to transfer right into the NFL. It just does not work out that way. We don't know if he's going to be the same player. Sure, Deshaun Watson says, I love this guy. But Deshaun Watson's going to say he loves every one of his players. What is he going to do? Come out and basically attack his teammates?
You look at Kuti and Fuller together.
You look at a Pat Mayo, and Mr. Mayo says
like a top 10 fantasy receiver, but
Pat Mayo's got him in tier 7 of his 8 tiers, and we all know Pat Mayo knows everything. So,
nice little plug there.
We're getting juicy.
Well, whatever Jeff said, I disagree. No, look, I agree with Foreman that we could see more. Obviously, we have to wait and see what I believe was an Achilles injury, and those are always tough to come back from. But they like him because he's a bigger back. That offensive line did get help with the draft. The Houston Texans did draft a lot of offensive linemen to bolster that up. But he does provide some pass protection to their franchise quarterback. So I get that. We don't know what that durability is. Keke Kuti, when you look at it, he averaged 10 targets over those 5 games. And like Pierce and Jack, these guys are mentioning, 15 targets that first game. And it was around that 9-10. I mean, he has that trust with Watson right now. And I'm trying to figure out, is Kuti better with Fuller on the field? That a guy like Fuller can stretch the field, Hopkins obviously, and then those under routes, those short routes. Because look, the Texans don't really feature a tight end. So this guy, even though he's only 180 pounds and probably won't get a lot of touchdowns, he could rack up those yards. So yeah, I agree with the panel here that he is the breakout guy.
Excellent, Smithers. We are going to see what you three think of the Tennessee Titans right after the panel B dishes on the Knicks, followed by our conversation with the most interesting man in baseball. That's Mike Clevinger.
We kind of heard some reports on why the Knicks didn't go after Durant as hard as we expected. What do you think of this asinine reasoning for not going with Durant?
You asked me for my biggest surprise in free agency. I said there wasn't one. I now remember what it is. The New York Knicks were not willing to offer Kevin Durant a max contract because of health concerns. 29 other teams were 100% willing to offer Kevin Durant a max contract. What a bad look for the Knicks. Just being, did Kevin Durant even meet with the Knicks in the end? Did they even have a meeting? I don't even remember.
I don't believe
imagine sitting at the table with the Knicks and Kevin Durant just being like, all right, so let me get this straight. You guys have been talking about having me here forever, and you're not offering me the max contract. And Dolan's just on the other side of the table like, yes, that's correct. Like, all right.
That is our plan.
I'm going to have to see you guys later. I have some other important meetings to get to.
Yeah,
so brutal.
That was just amazing. And I mean, if there was one thing that I could take away, being somebody who, doesn't follow the NBA as much as you do, but everybody knows about this epic failure for the Knicks here and just how they just screwed this up so royally. And I've never seen a tweet retweeted with a comment as much as the report about Dolan not offering that because of health concerns, and people just ripping this team and this management apart, because even a layman who is not that big into basketball is, how do you not you have the opportunity to get one of the best players in the NBA and you're going to hesitate?
I would assume that they knew at that point. They were like, all right, we're screwed. We're not going to get Kevin Durant, so watch this power move. We're going to offer him less than the max.
Yeah, we'll show
but you
them.
still just look like a bunch of idiots.
Welcome back to DraftKings is the Sweat, where we are now joined by the most interesting man in baseball. That would be Mike Clevinger of the Cleveland Indians. It's good to have you here, man.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys having me.
Not a problem. So before we get into the fun stuff, let's talk some shop. You've been dealing with some injuries pretty much all season, back, ankle. I mean, how do these ailments change your mindset when you're on the mound, or you just go about your business as usual?
I mean, that's kind of the goal with it, is go about your business as usual, but obviously there's some hesitancies in certain body parts. So I was fortunate with my back that there wasn't really much hesitancy. I was ready to kind of cut it loose the second I started throwing with the back, which was good. But the ankle thing's more like a lingering thing. So you just got to kind of grind and work on stability in between starts and, make it work.
Is that just like super frustrating for you? Or like, dang, another injury?
Yeah, both injuries were both kind of like freak injuries too. That was the worst part. It wasn't like, what I was doing in the weight room, what I was doing on the field. This was more like, my first injury, teres major, is only really common in rock climbers, which is pretty funny. And the ankle injury, the kind of sprain I had, the inversion sprain's only common on a basketball court. They don't even see it in baseball.
Okay, no skateboarding injuries, right?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm clear of those.
Well, you guys are looking up at the Twins right now in the standings, but at this point in the season, half the campaign's still to play. I mean, you're in the running for a division crown. So what do you think it's going to take to kind of close the gap down the stretch and win your fourth consecutive AL Central title?
I kind of think it's what we're doing right now. It's not obviously the standings, you know where it's at, but it's not watching the scoreboard the whole time you're playing. It's right now we're starting to do the little things right. We're starting to come together as a team. We're starting to take that extra base. We're starting to, fight even stronger when we get down. That's the little things we kind of we're searching for in the beginning of the season. I think it's only getting stronger. So I think we get on a good roll. And we're notorious for hitting hot streaks. The past 3 years, at least I've been here, we get going on a pretty good run at some point, and we haven't got that yet. So we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, you guys have had plenty of good runs in the past, especially in recent memory here. You and the Indians coming so close to winning the World Series in your rookie season against the Cubs. I know we're talking 3 years ago, but how does that loss maybe still motivate you guys? Does it at all?
Yeah, you're not going to forget about the Game 7. You're not going to forget about a Game 1 of the World Series just being there. It's the thing you put to bed, but certain times, certain memories will bring it back, and there's things that you'd always like to change, but if anything, it's just more motivation. The next time I get there, you kind of know and see where, at least personally, what did I leave off the table for that series? What did I leave off? Where was my mindset at then, and what can I correct now?
Still a very memorable first year in the majors, though, right?
First big league camp, first World Series.
All right, so who's the toughest batter you faced?
Ooh. It's going to sound cliche to say Mike Trout, but I swear I can get that man 0-2 and he's going to make me throw 5 more pitches. It's just inevitable. It's been, maybe got lucky, I think, once and threw him, less than 4 pitches. But no, it's like no matter what you're throwing, it's almost like he's ready for it. He's ready to either fall off and wait for the one you're going to slip up on.
Yeah, he is the best player in baseball here for a reason. So I think it's pretty obvious to people at home. You're rocking a mesmerizing collection of tattoos that reveals just about everything about you. So, and all in brilliant detail, by the way. So which one is your favorite?
See, that's another, it's got to be my Jimmy one right now, but I got to get it touched back up. The glove kind of wore it down. There's a lot more detail there. But that one or the sunflower on the wrist.
Okay. What are some of the other ones you got there?
I got my daughter's name with my spirit animal. It's an owl above it. And then I got a lotus here in the ditch, which wasn't very fun to get. And I also had to go swing a bat about 4 days after getting that and just kept ripping it back open. Because I got bumped up in the rotation that year to hit in San Fran. And I didn't know I was going to be hitting, so I thought I had some time in between starts with off days hitting. Nope, you got to swing a bat. And obviously couldn't go my rookie year and be like, hey, guys, I got this fresh tattoo. Can't rip it up.
Clearly you have a beautiful, full-flowing head of hair. So who has the best lettuce in baseball?
Behind me?
Yes, behind you. Obviously you're number one.
Man, I want to say Noah, but he shaved the sides of it. Now he's more of a Viking.
Yeah. So. What about Bryce Harper, right? He's known to have the perfect
he's got
flow.
The short, good flow. Pudge's son that pitches for San Fran.
Mm-hmm.
He's got great flow.
Okay.
Yeah, he's got great flow. He doesn't get credit for it.
I mean, it's you, and then there's just like everyone else, like in the distant second, third, and fourth place. So you clearly
I appreciate that. I like to believe that too.
You're on the throne there. But on that note, let's have you give out some superlatives for your teammates. So the best dresser is who?
I probably wouldn't have said this in years past, but recently I'm going to say Frankie Lindor. The other day he came in with a custom flannel that was made with all these like Ramones, different band albums, buttons, and other things. So I mean that was really cool. And he's always with the shoes too. And
there's you just rolling to the clubhouse with like your cutoff T-shirt.
Yeah, my bands and my Ruka shirt.
That's our style, man. Being two Florida guys, like I get it. Who has the best taste in music?
I mean, I want to say me. Obviously, I'm really big on my music, especially for the game. But no, Shane Bieber's got an excellent taste in music. He's definitely up there for sure. I'll pass him the aux chord. Him, Plesac. Plesac's good with it. And then Simber's got a funky taste in music too. Adam Simber's like, he likes all that old rock and old classical stuff that I like.
Okay, I was just about to ask you what music, what you're playing before a game. So is it just like the classical rock, little Led Zeppelin, that kind of stuff?
No. I mean, I usually, like on my start day, I'll probably start the day off with maybe that on the way to the field, and then I'll move into like maybe some house, and then I roll into like some old rap from the high school days in Jacksonville.
Oh, yeah, I feel you. Who's got the best sense of humor? Who's the jokester in the clubhouse?
I gotta say Carlos Carrasco, man. He'll put a smile on your face any day of the week, no matter what he has going on in his life, no matter, anything going on, he's coming in with a smile on his face and being the same guy. So I always appreciate that.
And now the deepest stomach, so the guy who can just eat the most, just mashing all those pre- and post-game meals, no matter what it is.
Easily Zach Plesac. The kid is a moose. A moose. I feel like he has to stop himself, but I've watched him hammer a couple burgers in one sitting like it was nothing. I'm sure he could have ate a couple more.
So I mentioned skateboarding, towards the top of our interview here. Is it true that you quit baseball in high school when you were at Wolfson to focus on skateboarding?
At the time, I was at Paxton School for Advanced Studies.
Okay.
And my freshman year, I made varsity, and then this company, everyone likes to exaggerate the story and say I was like pro, but I wasn't. This one company in Jacksonville, a local company, was like reaching out, like, hey, you get us a video, we'll get you some free decks, we'll get you on our team, maybe get some free, get in competitions for free. So I dropped baseball that freshman year and kind of rode around downtown Jacks. I lived in Riverside in Jacksonville, Florida, so then I just skate up to downtown and we'd get videos together and try to. But I slowly learned that wasn't the route that I needed to take.
Oh, man, good stuff. Mike Clevinger, man, thanks for making some time with us. It was good to talk to you, dude.
Yeah, it was fun, man. Thank you. See you guys.
See you.
Hey there, it's Brendan Glasheen, and with this DraftKings Fantasy Flash, a big three has assembled in Los Angeles. LeBron James and Anthony Davis will be joined by Jared Dudley on the Lakers next season. Dudley agreed to a one-year contract. Lakers are his 8th NBA team, and next season, 2019-2020, will mark Dudley's 14th year in the league. All right, not really a big three, but he offered some excellent insight on the Woj podcast. First, how the Lakers became a real possibility for the 33-year-old. Dudley to Woj, once I got the okay from LeBron when he signed off on it, we gonna make it happen. So I guess King James is taking part in basketball operations, huh? Why should we have believed he wasn't before? Dudley, well known for being an outspoken dude, just settled that discussion. Dudley also weighed in on Kawhi Leonard, who is a San Diego native just like Dudley. And according to Dudley, he and Kawhi worked out together during the 2011 NBA lockout. They're pals. His pitch to Leonard to join the Lakers was simple. When you're a California kid, you dream about playing in California. And of course, on the court, a LeBron, AD, Kawhi, big three, sorry Jared, would be, as Dudley put it, like the Miami Heat, but on steroids. His on-the-court clashes with Ben Simmons in the playoffs were hilarious. They were entertaining. Dudley, with this team, is likely just one of many veteran minimum guys to join the Lakers. That's with Kawhi or with no Kawhi.
Thank you, Brendan. Continuing our NFL team-by-team breakdowns now, focusing on the Titans. Reed, Jeff, and Pierce, welcome back. It's time to talk about some stuff.
Wow, yeah, it is. So DK Live's panel is predicting Derrick Henry will be their fantasy MVP this season. Are you in agreement here, Reed?
No. I don't get this. Look at every Alabama running back, from Eddie Lacy, Trent Richardson.
They're the worst.
TJ Yeldon, probably one of the worst.
Look at
all of them, right? You just don't know. These guys cannot be workhorse running backs. Hopefully Josh Jacobs is in a better spot. It kind of matches with opportunity and talent, right, in terms of fantasy football. But if you just look at what he's been able to do, he almost had as many touchdowns as he had receptions, which is, again, for a guy who's going in around like RB15 is asking a lot. You still have Deion Lewis there. They're not going to sit this guy down. They're paying him, close to $5 million a year. They're not going to just sit him down the bench. And still, he doesn't, Henry doesn't catch the ball in the backfield. That's Deion Lewis. And if we think Tennessee is going to be down a lot, which they probably are going to be this season, it's going to be Deion Lewis. It's not going to be Derrick Henry. I am completely out on this guy. No way.
Hey, Jeff, we can't forget that Henry set a franchise record with 238 yards in a game versus the Jags.
Woo! Whatever, dude. It was an off year for him.
I mean, Reed made a good point about Alabama running backs sucking, but the thing about Derrick Henry is he's really in a different class than pretty much every single one he listed off. Derrick Henry is a giant. I mean, he's a physical freak, and that aside, the Titans have finally decided to feature him. You look at the last 4 games of last season, over 20 carries. Deion Lewis had 3 carries the last 2 games of last year. It's also significant that the Titans, when they decided to hire a new OC, they went in-house with Arthur Smith. They promoted him. I think they're going to feature Derrick Henry a lot. I think one of the reasons why they're going to feature Derrick Henry a lot, they don't really have any other choices. This is just not an offense, especially with Marcus Mariota back there, who's going to be running guns. So yes, Derrick Henry is going to get a lot of carries this year. How it goes, we'll see. But I think he's going to be pretty good for fantasy.
Pierce, Jeff seems pretty optimistic about Derrick Henry. You know, Reed was off on him. So where do you sit with this one?
I don't know if Jeff was optimistic. He said, we'll see, and kind of shrugged.
Yeah, but that's optimistic.
That's optimism.
That is optimism for Jeff.
No, it's not optimism
yes, it is.
At all. He just thinks he's going to get a lot of carries. I'm optimistic, and it's not that I think he's going to get carries. He's going to get carries. Reed makes a good point. He doesn't catch the ball in the backfield, and Deion Lewis did get 151 carries last year. But the red zone work, the goal line work, all goes to Derrick Henry. The thing that we need to focus on is the month of December. And Derrick Henry rushed for 625 yards. That's the most yards by any running back ever in a single month. Tennessee decided, you know what? We've got this workhorse running back. Let's just continue to feed him the ball. And it worked out pretty well for them. This is the last year of his contract, so you might as well just run him into the ground. And guess what? The GM already said that's what they're going to do. They're going to give him a heavy workload. The Deion Lewis thing, didn't work out. Maybe he comes in on 3rd down and catches some passes. But this is Derrick Henry's team, like Jeff said. He's the only guy on that team.
Jeff, the panel predicts Adam Humphries will be the LVP. So how overvalued will he be? I think it's a long shot here that he repeats his career year that he had in 2018 with Tampa Bay.
I mean, who's drafting Adam Humphries?
Reed.
He can beat the LVP, but
Reed
my
will.
LVP is going to be Marcus Mariota. I mean, I seriously, who's drafting Marcus Mariota and expecting anything? He's got 24 passing touchdowns in his last 29 games. I mean, I mentioned off the top, the Titans offense is not going to change. They promoted from within. Pierce gave a pretty good rundown of Derrick Henry having a good year. Marcus Mariota, there's no upside there. It's his 5th year in the league. Why should you expect anything different at this point? He's been a little bit injury prone as well, although he hasn't missed that many games. But he's stepped out of games and he's had to come out and deal with lingering hamstring issues. There's no upside for me for Marcus Mariota. I'm sure people will still try to make an argument that this is the year he breaks out and he throws for 4,000 yards. But for a player who's only thrown for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, I think twice over his career so far, no, he's going to be the least valuable player.
Pierce, you just mentioned that the Titans are insisting on becoming a more run-heavy team, not pass-friendly. So this does not work in Humphries' favor.
Yeah, no, that's the big thing. You look at what Adam Humphries did last year. It really wasn't that amazing. Basically averages 5 catches for 50 yards a game. That's not really going to win you any leagues. He had a good year for being Adam Humphries, but that's about it. He went from a team that passed the 10th most, or in the top 10 in terms of passing. Now he's going to go to a team that passes, I think, 31st most in football. They're just a run-heavy team. He went from a team that was always playing from behind in Tampa and averaged in the, 7th most plays per game, and he's going to a Tennessee team that averages the 28th most offensive plays per game, and they run the ball a lot. His stats were inflated last year, and even inflated, they weren't that great. Humphries is not going to give you anything.
Reed, that was a career best 76 receptions for him. That's more than any wide receiver has had with Marcus Mariota over his entire career. Will he be overvalued this year, LVP?
Yeah, so I agree with these guys to an extent where if you just look at it face value in a vacuum, Adam Humphries doesn't, you don't trust a guy just as your wide receiver, 2 or 3? He's probably not even be a 2, so a 3. But you got to look at where these guys are being drafted. Jeff mentioned it. No one is drafting Adam Humphries, so he's probably a spot start, right? And Pierce kind of alluded to it with Derrick Henry. You pay this guy on a 4-year contract, $36 million. The first 4 or so games, you're probably going to feature this guy a little bit more. It's Corey Davis, actually, for me, of where you're drafting him, right? Value obviously depends on where you're picking up these guys. It's the 3rd year, which all of us thought, right? Corey Davis in this offense was going to be a top 15, top 20 receiver by this time when he first got drafted as number 4 overall pick, and he just hasn't panned out, right? I think only 30% of his games he's reached wide receiver 3 or better. So now you look at where you're drafting these guys, and Corey Davis and Adam Humphries, week 7 through 9, this guy averaged about 10 or 8 targets. Granted, it was on a Buccaneers team, but who else are you going to pass it to, right? If Corey Davis can't get open, if he's the guy that's going to be bracketed, he's going to be the one that the defenses are going to focus on. Delaney Walker, we don't know what's going to happen there, so I don't think he's valuable. I think when you're drafting Corey Davis, that scares me a little bit.
Well, speaking of Corey Davis, we're going to need a little bit of a Cliff Notes version of these answers. We're running a bit tight on time. So Corey Davis is the panel's breakout player for the Titans. Who do you think the breakout player is going to be, Pierce?
Not him, and it was his 3rd year in a row. We're going to call him a breakout player, and he's yet to break out. He had 2 good games last year. The Cliff Notes version, he's getting drafted around the 9th round at the same time as Curtis Samuel, D.D. Westbrook of your Jacksonville Jaguars is getting drafted at the same time. I'd rather have both of those guys. This is a run team.
Reed?
Good stuff.
Yeah, give me Adam Humphries over this guy. I mean, when you look at what Corey Davis, I just mentioned it, so Adam Humphries.
Okay, Jeff.
Give me Tywon Taylor over Corey Davis. I mean, they had the same number of catches the last 5 games last year, and Tywon Taylor had more yardage. I think Taylor doesn't need to do that much if you're going to get him in the last round of a draft or something. He could easily get 800 yards and 4 touchdowns. So I'd say Tywon Taylor.
You 3 enjoy your 4th of July, or at least the 2 of you who celebrate it. Sorry, Jeff. Steve's here to put up his bukes after a quick timeout.
Reveal to the people the biggest loser, team or player, of free agency.
Well, we're not going far here. It's Duchesne's old team, the Blue Jackets. And I'll throw in a Western Conference team also, the Winnipeg Jets. But let's start with Columbus. They lost 3 very important players, Artemi Panarin, Matt Duchene, and Sergei Bobrovsky. All they did July 1st was add wing Gustav Nyquist on a pretty decent contract. It's a nice addition, but it's not nearly enough to compensate for the loss there. It appears as of now that the Jackets will go into next season with Joonas Korpisalo as their starting goaltender. Korpisalo is very below average, backup level goalie, career .907 save percentage, .289 goals against average. Columbus is very thin down the middle without Duchene. They're left with Pierre-Luc Dubois, Alexander Wenberg, who was in Coach John Tortorella's doghouse for most of last season, so that's not really a great start. And there's literally virtually no way for them to replace the production of Artemi Panarin. So, yeah, I mean, if you ask me, any of the teams that made the playoffs last year, who's most likely not to make it heading into the next season, it's the Blue Jackets by a mile. As for the Jets, though, they pretty much also stood pat this offseason, didn't really make any significant moves, and they traded away Jacob Trouba, which shortens their defense. That Central Division, like I've been saying, is very, very stacked with the Preds, the Blackhawks, the Avalanche, the Stars, the Blues, reigning Stanley Cup champions. They all got better. So, yeah, I mean, the Jets have a lot of question marks surrounding 2 restricted free agents, Kyle Connor and Patrick Laine. So, yeah, I don't really like what the Jets have done so far this offseason, and they really lost out on free agency, I think.
The time has come. Our baseball panel is back. Steve, Jules, and Garion, and they're ready to rock or get rocked in Put Up Your Bukes.
All right, Steve's going to give us his 3 guys he likes for this evening, along with DK point projections. Julian and Garion will agree or disagree with the pick. So your first dude, please, Steve.
Yeah, it's going to be Ariel Jurado. He's Spanish, man. Make sure it rolls off the tongue there when you speak of him.
Yeah, Jules.
Look, he started 8 games this season. 6 of those 8 starts He's allowed 3 runs or less. And look, this Angels lineup now is looking a lot different. Tommy La Stella now looking like he's going to be missing up to 3 months with that shin injury that he has here. And he's been one of their better hitters. So we're looking at a weaker lineup for the Angels now. And Jurado has pitched some of his best baseball at Globe Life Park. Only 319 WOBA, 4.30 xFIP at home. I think tonight's pitching slate stinks overall from top to bottom. I think going cheap is really the way you want to go here, and I think this is the way to do so. So for him tonight, 21 DK fantasy points, I think that's totally obtainable.
Julian, thoughts on the point projection? 21. Oh, woo.
I think Steve's pick on Ariel Jurado is probably just about as good as his Spanish. Look, I don't necessarily hate or love the Angels on this slate. They're not in the best spot. I understand Tommy La Stella just got hurt as well. But just look at what this guy has done lately. He's struck out 7 guys over his last 3 starts, totaling 16 innings in those 3 starts. And the Angels strike out the least out of any team in the majors. So am I really afraid of the Angels, rocking the Rangers on this slate? Maybe not, although they could get to the bullpen. But I just think we need the strikeout upside here. Even with a cheap pitcher, that number is just so low, and it's going against an offense that strikes out so little. I don't necessarily want to get involved with Jurado from a DFS standpoint, whereas I like the Rangers a little bit more just in terms of tonight's slate of games.
Garion, he's hit 21 DK fantasy points just once in his last 10 games.
Yeah, I mean, really, his 3 most successful starts from a DFS perspective, and look, you can only pitch the schedule you're given, have been Detroit, Baltimore, and Kansas City. And I think it speaks to what Julian was saying, that a lot of his points, the few that he's been able to score, have just come from volume. He has to pitch deep into this game because he's probably not going to get more than 5 strikeouts at most against an Angels team that just doesn't swing and miss a whole lot or chase pitches. I mean, I just look at it and say, if we're really doing this because Jurado looked so great in his last start against Detroit, let's just keep picking on Detroit. Ross Detweiler's 5'9", and is pitching against Detroit tonight. I think I'd rather just take advantage of that opportunity because I see more strikeout potential in that particular start.
All right, Steve, who's going to be next? Who's your second buke?
Yeah, we're going to go with Roberto Perez over with the Indians, and his best hitting comes against left-handed pitchers this season. He sports a 4.12 WOBA, 306 isolated power, 6 of his 14 home runs. And then he gets Danny Duffy tonight. He had a really rough month of June, allowed 7 home runs through just 29 innings. And when you compare what he did the 2 months prior, he only allowed 4 home runs in those 2 months during April and May. And then 5 of the 11 total home runs he's allowed on the year have come at home against righties. I think this is a really good spot for Perez to definitely hit one out of here. $3,600. He's really cheap tonight. I think it's a really good place to target him, the matchup that he's excelled in pretty much all season long.
Gary and 14 DK fantasy points. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm all in on this one. Perez against lefties. At one point he was up over 4K. So to get him at 3.6 is a really nice spot. He also was at one point in June batting like 5th against lefties. That'd be nice. That'd be better than 7th. But really, a catcher, you can only ask for so much. And like Steve said, he has mashed left-handed pitching, specifically left-handed fastballs. He's not much of a breaking ball hitter, but he's got a 577 isolated power against left-handed fastballs so far this season. Duffy's not as fastball heavy as the top-end guys in the league, but he still throws that fastball to right-handed batters about 45% of the time. It's his primary offering, so this matchup sets up really nicely for Perez.
Julian, are you going to agree with Steve?
I think the matchup is fine for Perez for all the reasons these guys said. I believe it's Roberto, Steven, another Spanish man here. But
wow.
Look, the only reason I'll argue here, I'll say no, he doesn't get it because, number one, I like to argue with Steve. And number two, I just don't necessarily like, and Gary touched on it a little bit, that he's hitting further down in the lineup. If he was hitting 5th, then for $3,600, sure, we're getting a guy at a little bit of a discount. But I don't want to pay this much for a guy at this position hitting this late in the order. And I know that Steve's going to come back and yell at me and say, oh, give me someone else at catcher, Julian. You've got a guy like Travis d'Arnaud leading off for the Rays. He's $3,100. The Rays are projected for more than 5 runs. He's in an opposite-hand matchup. There's a guy. I would rather just spend less money for guys higher in the order at this position.
All right, we basically have a little more than a minute left. Steve, do you just want to tell us who your third buke was going to be?
Yeah, Matt Beatty, because he's big.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay. Okay.
Slate approved time?
Slate approved time. Let's just do slate approved picks then. Steve, maybe you'll elaborate a little more on your slate approved pick.
Yeah, it's going to be Hirata. I think he's in a really nice spot here. Paying down for pitching, I think is the way you got to go in the slate.
Gary and slate approved.
Jose Abreu, really nice spot against a left-handed pitcher who probably shouldn't be pitching at the major league level. 4.4 is a very acceptable salary. I like that spot a lot, first base tonight.
Jules, slate approved pick, please.
Trevor Story was $5,900 about a week before he got hurt. He just came back. He's $4,500 for this game at Coors.
All right, that's a show. Thanks, guys, for all your help. Thanks, guys, for watching us.
Yeah.
And gals.
Yeah.
And let's go.
Yeah.
4th of July
Show will
tomorrow.
be back
We gotta
on
go.
Friday. Yeah. 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Download the DK Live app. We'll see you on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, everywhere that you've been watching us. Emerson is.
We gotta go.
Okay. Yeah.
Love you guys.
Rolling into the 4th of July. We'll see you on Friday at 6 p.m.